What's going on, everybody? It's been a minute since I did a video about this series. It's been at least like 3 months at this point since the last one I did. As you can see, I'm wearing glasses and I'm going to be wearing glasses for a while, and I apologize if the glare from the lights reflects off of the glasses. Sadly, there is nothing I can do about it. I am without contact for like the next month and a half, 2 months, which is a bummer because I'm really not used to wearing my glasses too much. But my own vanity aside, I really want to talk about this manga, and that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about Volume 3, the deluxe of Berserk, and this is going to be set up as the chapters within this deluxe. So that's going to be in the title of the video, just in case anybody's watching this that maybe hasn't read the deluxe volumes but has read the manga either online or read the singles. So this is going to be accessible for whoever, even if you're just like barely starting it. From where I'm at, this is stuff that I already read. So I got pretty far into it before I restarted the whole series. And since restarting it, I just read Volume 3, and we're going to talk about what happens in Volume 3. So we're not going to be getting to the eclipse yet, but my guess is more than likely we will be on the eclipse in Volume 4, and I'm going to work to try to get these out a lot quicker. So we're not, so I'm not dropping these every 3 months. I really want to try to cut it down to maybe a month and a half between videos, because this going forward, I'm going to start putting a lot of work into these to try to get as much info out as possible. So let's knock this out. This is Let's Review for the Omnibus Volume 3. That's going to cover these chapters right here. Please stick around. We got tons of stuff going on in this channel. And let's knock it out. Let's review Berserk. I didn't mention this in the last video because I wanted to save it for this one. We get much more of Casca's backstory and the reason for her stout devotion to Griffith. He saved her when she was just a small girl from getting assaulted. If you're wondering why I'm using assault and not the other more accurate word, it's so that YouTube won't kill this video. This is already a pretty small channel after all. This part of the story is sadly rife with horrible people in power, from a predatory noble who abuses young boys to the King of Midland who attempts to assault his own daughter, Princess Charlotte. Volumes 3 and 4 essentially close out the last part of the Golden Age arc with a brutal crescendo that has ruined readers' lives for decades now. It's what the original anime closed on. However, that doesn't happen until Volume 4 and is carried on into the first part of Volume 5. So for now, let's focus on the events of Volume 3. Griffith is definitely a man for speeches, justifying his every action either to whomever will listen or to himself. He has a well-composed answer to every query. I think that is a part of the beauty of Griffith as a character. He is so multifaceted that even though he has done horrible, vicious, and violent things, including what he does during the eclipse, people still get Griffith tattoos and cosplay him at anime conventions. Griffith justifies letting a disgusting old man put his hands on him by admitting simply he needed the money. An army won't raise itself. It needs funds for horses, food, weapons, and soldiers. All of these things are expendable and will run out sooner or later and will need to be replenished. I don't feel at all responsible for my comrades who've lost their lives under my command. I guess it's because they themselves chose to fight, just as I've made my choice. But if for their sake, for the sake of the dead, if there's something I can do, that thing is to win. Griffith says this to Casca before digging his fingers into his flesh and drawing blood. Griffith means to see his dreams realized no matter the cost and no matter how many lives it consumes. In the present, Casca and Guts have to fight off, forgive me for butchering this name, Commander Kaborlowitz and his men. Guts left the man gravely injured the last volume, and now the commander's back for revenge. The man even brought a small army with him to essentially capture one man and one woman. It's not Casca they're worried about, because they don't see her as much of a threat. They don't know she's fought tooth and nail to be taken seriously, and they probably wouldn't care either, as they plan on having their way with her after Guts is dead. The odds are truly stacked against them here. Seas of men for the meat grinder, their lives ending at the base of Guts' sword. As Casca is about to be ruthlessly savaged by brutish soldiers, the band of the Hawk comes to her rescue. Before that, she manages to stab one of them in the eye. Her worries, however, aren't for her own well-being. Rather, she's worried about Guts. She doesn't want to find that he's been killed. This catches Judo by surprise, as up until that point, she's hated even the sight of Guts. On their way to aid their fellow brother in arms, the band of the Hawk finds bodies strewn on the wooded battlefield. Judo even comments, "You're kidding, right? There's almost 100 corpses." The 100 men are killed trying to take down this one berserker. The band of the Hawk finds Guts leaned up against a tree, resting, bloodied, and stuck with arrows in his armor, but not beaten. It's gonna take a hell of a lot more than that to kill this walking tank. After the fight in the woods, Casca puts a sort of balm on Guts that she got from Judo, like fairy balm or something. It was a nice intimate moment between the two, as once upon a time they did nothing other than butt heads. I really like what Guts said to Casca here, because it stands so far apart from how Griffith views things. Whereas Griffith can only see his dreams and desires and views others as sacrificing their dreams for his, Guts sees the dreams of his men and takes them into consideration and even admires them for having dreams for after the fighting ends. For Guts, the fighting may never end. Eclipse aside, since that hasn't happened yet, Guts basically sees his life ending on the battlefield. That's all he wants out of life, to fight until the bitter end, because that is how he views his life's value. After the eclipse, that path is cemented, whereas before it was just how he wanted to go out, because it's all he knew: death and violence. Guts gazes out at a sea of campfires, each an individual light, with hopes and dreams. He is warming himself by those fires, but he doesn't plan on sticking it out forever. Once the fighting with the band of the Hawk is through, Guts plans to be on his way again, alone. His last battle will be one in which they will help take the impenetrable fortress of Doldry under Tudor control. Of course, the nobles don't see how the band of the Hawk could possibly win, where they all failed every step of the way in what has been dubbed the 100-Year War. They see Griffith's conviction as insolence and boasting, basically thinking he should know his place as a commonborn. For Griffith, the fates have always aligned so far for him to get his way, and from the looks of it, things are still going according to that plan. Then enter the old disgusting man who Griffith had to lay with for money to fund his personal campaign, Governor General Ganon. Miura Sensei did a solid job in drawing this depraved piece of human garbage. You almost cannot wait for him to get his and be put to the sword for his atrocious acts. He dons full plate and means to enter the battlefield, where he will meet Griffith and take him back to the fortress. He's so desperate in this that he offers the men fighting on the side of Tudor any riches they desire for bringing Griffith to him alive and unharmed. Post-battle, Griffith kills Ganon after insulting the old creep, not out of anger or resentment, simply because he doesn't want the old man telling people about the night they laid together. It would tarnish Griffith's growing reputation. The way in which the battle was won is far more entertaining though. It seems Guts is close to meeting his end by the hands of General Boscone of the Purple Rhinos. Boscone is a huge towering mammoth of a man, and his horse is equally as much of a brute as he is. Think Tree Sentinel from Elden Ring. Guts seems bested at every turn. Even his sword is cut to the hilt, rendering it useless. With no blade to wield, it was here that things got interesting, as it seems Zod was watching the whole ordeal from afar. From on high, atop a mountain, he flings his sword in some General Radon type of move, and it comes to land right before Guts. Guts wastes no time in taking up the strangely designed sword, almost like a scimitar, and in an instant he takes both Boscone and his horse's heads in one fell swoop. Casca also takes out Adon in one of the more satisfying deaths. That dude was unreal annoying. I personally couldn't wait for him to finally meet his end. And who better than the woman he has said such vulgar and misogynistic things to? Pretty sure with that, the Kaborlowitz line came to an abrupt but necessary end, unless there are more sons than the three slain. There are always several moving parts at any point in time in the story, which I think is part of what makes it so special. I won't go into explicit detail about each thing, otherwise this video will be 3 hours instead of 40 minutes. Guts and Casca continue to grow closer, leading to their eventual hooking up. Behind the scenes, nobles meet in secret to plan how to get rid of Griffith, as if that went so well the last time, when Julius and his son Adonis were brutally executed by Guts. This council, which lurks in the shadows, is led by a dude who looks and acts like Varys from Game of Thrones. And you also have Zod making cryptic comments to himself about the rapidly approaching eclipse. I've experienced the eclipse now in manga form, in the 1997 anime, and the film series that came out several years ago. And I'll tell you this, as I am still in the middle of Volume 3, I'm not looking forward to experiencing that again. Things are literally and figuratively heating up, if you catch my drift. The plot against Griffith now even includes the Queen of Midland herself, who, as it turns out, was carrying on an affair with Julius. Couldn't care less about her or her story. Don't even remember her name, if she was even given one in the first place. She was just a pawn to be used by Minister Foss, who knew about her affair with the late Julius. It was nice to see the Band of the Hawk get some reprieve and go to the ball. It's probably the last beautiful thing they will ever see. Soon enough, they will be made sacrifices, surrounded by unimaginable horrors. At least they got the title of White Phoenix Knights, right? Poison is the weapon of choice for nobility. Seems like all throughout history, poison is how people in power or in higher stations got rid of their adversaries or people they just didn't like. Griffith is poisoned by spiked wine and is left for presumably dead. As the party goes on, the nobles gather to congratulate themselves on killing Griffith until they smell smoke, then realize they're trapped in a burning building. The double crossing here was excellent. First, Minister Foss screws over the nobles that plotted for Griffith's execution. Then they all burn alive, including the Queen. Then Griffith has the men he paid to kidnap Foss's daughter killed by Guts. What I liked about this part was Griffith telling Guts to let the men have the money. They'd earned it. Something about that just felt so cold, letting dead men keep their gold as if they could spend it in hell. Griffith is making money moves, definitely cementing his place in time, and won't let a thing stand in his way. He's proven time and again how ruthless he can be. On the other side of this is Guts, who can no longer live in Griffith's shadow and decides to leave. Casca tries to stop him but fails, and instead decides to go get Griffith. Judo and Corcus also try to stop him, though Corcus not so much, which should be expected as he never much liked Guts to begin with. After all, it was Corcus who initiated the whole thing when Guts first ran into the Band of the Hawk all those years ago. If not for Corcus wanting to fight him, their paths might have never crossed. It's what Judo tells Guts here that is important. Guts seems to think Casca and Griffith will be together, but that will never happen. Griffith is set on his dream of nobility, of ascending to the next plateau. Casca can't get him there, but Princess Charlotte can. Judo even asks Guts if he could see himself with Casca, But Guts doesn't feel worthy of her. He wants to become a man who can be worthy of someone like Casca. Guts is tired of standing in the shadow of someone else's dream. In the way he was warming himself by the light of the campfire of dreams, it's time to pursue his own. He kind of reminded me of Jules from Pulp Fiction here, deciding to travel and find himself, while Vincent is calling him a bum. In this case, it would probably be Casca. And all this turning of the wheels leads up to the beginning of the end, where Guts and Griffith will have their last fight as friends. This is their last fight before the eclipse. Despite everything Griffith says about wanting an equal, he acts like a child throwing a temper tantrum. During his fight with Guts, he makes up his mind. If he can't have Guts, no one can. Griffith doesn't even see Guts as a person with dreams and ambitions, but as an object for him to use or break at his leisure. Griffith wanted a faithful dog, and Guts no longer wants to be that. Yet their fates will become inevitably intertwined for years to come. Griffith is a great tactician, so during the fight with Guts, he's planning his moves and what will end up killing Guts and what attack would simply injure him. Griffith thinks he knows what move Guts will make and is ready to counter it at a moment's notice. Griffith doesn't realize even the best laid plans can fall apart, and that it does. Guts bests Griffith, leaving both he and the spectating band of the Hawk stunned. No one expected Guts to win, and especially not Griffith, who sits knee-deep in snow, bewildered expression on his face. Guts will be no man's dog, not anymore, so he sets off alone, and in the woods, beside a campfire, he spots a figure he'd never seen before. The Skull Knight. The Skull Knight warns Guts about the impending eclipse, telling him it will be upon them in 1 year's time. You, struggler, take heed, he tells Guts. He and his friends will be gathered together according to the Skull Knight, a torrent of madness, a tempest of death for which the human body could never atone, shall sweep over you. Griffith becomes reckless and jumps the gun on his seduction of Princess Charlotte, something I'm assuming he meant to do over time, possibly over a few years, slowly gaining favor and status until he could marry her without trouble. All that goes out the literal window when he comes to hers in the middle of the night, set on seducing her. Why? Because Guts abandoned him. After having his way with Princess Charlotte, Griffith curls up naked, caressing the healed wound where Guts had cut him. At this moment, Griffith feels truly alone. Despite having the band of the Hawk and Casca at his side, he lost his anchor. It's interesting that having Guts at his side made Griffith more brash and reckless, which Casca had commented on previously. However, after Guts' parting, Griffith is still being reckless and putting himself in yet another grave danger. Only this time it's one from which he will not escape. As he flees from Charlotte's room and makes his way into the courtyard and over the wall, he is surrounded by men. A handmaid witnessed the coitus between Griffith and Charlotte. Griffith is chained and flogged by the King of Midland, who scolds him all the while, calling him a thief. And of course, Griffith goes and makes his predicament all that much worse by basically telling the king he knows the king wants to bed his own daughter. Charlotte bears a super striking resemblance to her mother. Not the queen who plotted against Griffith, but her biological mother. And this does prove to be the reason for the king's unhealthy obsession with the girl. She's of marrying age, yet has had all potential suitors turned away. Why? Because the king wants to keep her all to himself. The king of Midland goes into Charlotte's room and essentially tries to have his way with her. Charlotte is disgusted by him, and in the panels where the assault is taking place, the looks on his face are truly horrifying. Miura Sensei did a fantastic job making this morose old man look predatory and unhinged. The king doesn't leave things at torturing Griffith for his brashness and stupidity, which he vows to carry out for no less than 1 year. He also goes after the Hawks. They're called into a field in the open because of a supposed letter from Griffith telling them to be there and to come unarmed, only to be flanked on all sides and shot down by arrows. It's Casca's quick thinking that saves their lives. However, in the aftermath, they spend a year in hiding. The whole while, Midland is still hunting them down, still trying to eradicate the band of the Hawk. Guts, who has been on a journey of his own, returns when he hears word of what is happening. He manages to get there in the nick of time to help save them from mercenaries. And then, after the fighting is complete, Casca asks to have a word with him, only to tell Guts to draw his sword. In the blink of an eye, she is atop him, swinging wildly. Casca's taking out the last year's worth of exhaustion and anger and the unknowing out on him. Then Guts and Casca make sweet, sweet love, which is interrupted by Guts' reminder of the past, of being assaulted by Donovan. Guts wraps his hands around Casca's neck as if he were choking his younger self. He doesn't even realize he's doing this until he snaps out of it and sees he is hurting Casca. Guts is a damaged man, but not a monster. He apologizes to Casca for harming her. Casca wants to embrace Guts and his wounds and tend to them, and she in turn wants a wound by Guts to match the one she dealt him, figuratively speaking, of course. Where it stands by the end of the volume is that Griffith is captured and being tortured, and Casca doesn't even know if he's still alive. She lived her life as a sword for Griffith to use, but one day realized she was more than that. Casca was a woman. However, she knew she would never be Griffith's woman. Echoing what Judo said to Guts in the tavern before Guts' departure 1 year ago. There was definitely something there burning between Casca and Guts, but she refused to acknowledge it, as did Guts, for their own reasons. Casca still saw herself as Griffith's blade, and Guts wanted to forge his own path before feeling worthy of someone like Casca. Like the campfires in the distance with dreams and ambitions, in time, the common-born Griffith might have taken the throne of Midland and taken Charlotte to wife. He would have figured out a way. However, Griffith was no god, just a man, and like a man, he became careless, left broken when Guts left him. The thing about a broken man is he has nothing at all left to lose.
Been by the hands of God. I stand as a wrench between your wheeling cog, fastening my belt, bracing myself to withstand against all odds. Himself shadowing his battle ready, murder dogs. Rip the skin off your horses, triumph to smash the sorceress. Lethal forces, the failure of your ambitions is more painful than divorces. Smash its own piece on the doorway, when the door hits, that's it. Call it quits, zipped up in plastic, cremated, melted like elastic. Dreams don't mean shit, in this life they don't exist. Nightmares.
Guts is warming himself. Fuck me. I think that's good.